Hi, Alex here. I thought you guys wanted to get an update. Also, thank you for the kind words. It's been rather hard. My brother's death and his wife's screams are burned into my brain. Another issue is the trumpets are getting louder and I'm starting to hear chanting and bells chiming. It's day in and day out, non-stop. I've been contemplating suicide. Just end it all, you know? I find myself about to go down that hole of no return and welcome the release of death. However, anytime I get brave enough and I'm about to pull that hammer back, I black out. I wake up usually on my bed with the gun on the floor where I was sitting. Whatever's going on, whatever these fucking things want is beyond me. And that's not the worst of it. It's when I sleep. That's when the true nightmare begins. I feel like if I tell you guys this, it may help me cope a little. That last message I sent out, everyone was rather nice. It's so much to unpack, and if you have a weak stomach, please skip ahead if you want to. It all started last night. My dream, nightmare began with just a black canvas. It was just me mindlessly drifting in a seemingly infinite void. But I couldn't wake up or move. That's all there was. Just me in the dark floating. I started to panic as still to this very minute feels real, and with that it felt like this won't ever end. In my head, what felt like decades pass as I float in pure darkness with only my thoughts. It wasn't much longer, maybe a year or two, it's hard to tell to be honest, that I started seeing something in the distance slowly approaching me. Or maybe I was approaching it. In the distance, there was a long hallway with no end in sight. The hallway looked like the hospital halls I used to frequent. It reminded me of how my dad lost his life to cancer. All the years we spent, the countless hours crying and praying for him to get better. So yeah, I know these halls as if it was my home. It was scary how accurate this was. Down to the light blue stripe and the off-white color of the walls. I finally floated to this hall and landed on the floor. I kept looking at the checkered pattern floor, thinking to myself on how life would be if my father survived, if my mother never ran away. Would my brother still be alive? Sorry for getting a little emotional. I just have to let you guys know exactly how it is. I decided to swallow my fears and my judgment. As I walked down the hall, the only sound was my heavy footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness. After what seems like miles of walking, I came across a door. It's my father's room. I see a light on the bottom of the door. I can hear something else. It was my dad calling out to me. So I rushed through the door and saw my dad looking like he did long ago. Young and healthy. I instantly rushed in and hugged my father. His cologne smelled as strong as it used to. His hug back was warm and inviting. I haven't felt this happy in my life. There, champ. My oh my. You have grown. Look at you. Strong as an ox. My father said robustly. Thanks, Papa. I've been working out a lot to help with the depression. You don't know, but losing you was the hardest thing in my life. Well, where's little Donnie? I've missed him too. My dad trying to look behind me at the door, expecting my goofball brother to burst in. Pops. Donnie. And before I could say a word, he jumps out of the closet and yells, Dad! You're alive! I don't know how to process this. I saw my brother's ashes. Donnie? How are you here? My brother looked at me. I don't rightfully know, to be honest. I was opening my door for my buddy Aaron, and next I know, I fell out the closet. As my brother and father hug and caught up, I took a deep few breaths and ran my fingers through my hair, trying to find a way to tell my brother what happened. As I turn around and open my mouth, I hear the trumpets in full force. My head feels like it was going to explode. It was then I see a grotesque mass of wings circling astronomical rings. On these rings were bloodshot red eyes of varying sizes and colors. Its very presence was distorting space around it. Its mere existence was causing my eyes to blur and my mind to race. As it spoke to me, I can see the axes of all creation merging and twisting. I managed to say, "What do you want?" The being stopped moving. The sound of its rings were making this akin, sort of rusty metal that was being ripped sound. The song of metal scraping against metal is all I can hear. And in an instant, I heard nothing. The darkness was all gone. I looked around and time was frozen. All there was me and this thing. Ye shall utterly destroy all the places wherein the nations which ye shall possess served their gods, upon the high mountains and upon the hills, and under every green tree. It spoke to me. It felt like my very soul was shaking and I cannot stand on my own feet. What does that even mean? Why are you doing this? I let out with all my remaining strength. I took a deep breath and was able to pull myself up and stare this thing down. My child, you know not of what's to come. You must follow. I am your shepherd, and you are my flock. Listen to your heart, and hear my love, and feel my intent. All of this is just but a fleeting existence to the greater tomorrow. Child, even your family here are nothing but mere devices in a greater story. Fuck you. I said as loud as I can, push out of my exhausted body. Child, I gave you what you wanted most, yet you still deny me. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. It said. The sound of fluttering wings is all I heard. Time returned normally. I turned to see my family, my brother and father. Something was wrong. They were staring at me with massive grins, unhuman grins. Their smile kept growing, and slowly I can hear the squelching of the flesh, tearing as the faces keeps distorting. I reached out to them to try and stop whatever this was, but I was frozen, forced to watch. Blood was pouring from their mouths, and they were crying as they feebly reached out to me. Arms outstretched. I can see their arms twitching as they lost full control of their own body. It was then I heard the trumpets again, but this time it was distorted as if played off key. It was then my brother grabbed his bicep on his right arm and dug his fingers into his own flesh. Blood rushed out and sprayed on the floor as he dug into his arm. The sound of tendons snapping and his flesh slogging off his arm was sickening. I watched in forced horror as my own brother was pulling his muscles out of his own arm, removing the tendons and spraying blood on my face and painting the room in a dark red hue. And it wasn't over. I saw my brother after removing all the muscle in his arms and stripping his flesh. He then stared into my eyes, where he slowly grabs the top of his mouth and the bottom half. And with separate arms, he split open his own head, leaving nothing but the top part hanging on a thread as his body makes a sickening thud on the ground. I was forced to look at my father as we were released, but only for a moment. In that time, I rushed towards him and held him in my arms, both of us not saying a word. In a short time, I heard my father start to gurgle. I reeled back to look at him, and I wish I never did. His body was melting as a dark black liquid started to extrude out of every possible opening on his head. The smell was awful, like a decaying animal, but much more pungent. I watched as that's all I can do as I see my father slowly turn into a human meat puddle, bone and all. His very flesh melting in my own hands and his bones crumbling to dust. I was left alone again. Even the walls around the room started to decay. The darkness swallowed me once more. Shortly after, I felt it watching me. I swear I can hear this fucking thing, and a second time, I was weeping. After I turned to see it, I was crying tears of blood. I felt nothing but anger as I yelled every curse in the book. I ended my tirade with, "I will never help you or your kind. I will let this world burn before I bow to a monster like you." Shortly after, I woke up. I sprang out of bed and splashed water on my face. The horns, the sounds this thing was plaguing me with stopped. A moment of reprieve. These images of my family are still in my head. Why am I being tortured? Why am I chosen to bear this burden, whatever it may be? Sometimes the good has wicked intent, I suppose. I know one thing for sure. Fuck them. I have to log off, but I hope you guys stay safe and far away from here. Until next time. Take care.